Lena Ward's body was found beneath her half-finished painting, and Sergeant Tom Riker, the man sworn to protect her, was the last person seen near her house that night. From that moment, Maple Falls stopped being a quiet town and became the stage for one of the most disturbing cover-ups the police never wanted the world to uncover. Please subscribe for daily new update of Crime Story and watch till end. The small town of Maple Falls, Ohio, had always been known for its calm and simplicity. Tucked between rolling hills and wide green fields, it was the kind of place where everyone knew one another, where neighbors shared sugar and stories, and where nothing bad ever seemed to happen. But on the morning of August 14, 2018, that quiet image shattered forever. It started when Lena Ward's next-door neighbor, Mrs. Perry, noticed something unusual. Lena's car, a small blue Honda Civic, had been parked in the same spot for 2 days. The curtains in her living room were drawn tightly shut, and no lights had been seen through the windows. At first, Mrs. Perry assumed Lena was away on a trip, but then she remembered that Lena's cat, Milo, was usually visible through the window every morning. On that day, there was no sign of him. When Mrs. Perry knocked on the front door, there was no answer. She tried calling Lena's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Concerned, she called the local police. Officers arrived within 30 minutes and forced their way inside. What they found inside that modest home would haunt the town for years. Lena Ward, a 29-year-old art teacher at Maple Falls Elementary, was found lying motionless on the floor near her easel. Her body showed signs of struggle, and the walls were marked with streaks of red paint, or what appeared to be paint at first glance. The police quickly realized it wasn't paint. The cheerful art studio that once smelled of turpentine and acrylics was now a crime scene. Word spread fast. Within hours, the entire town knew that something terrible had happened to their beloved teacher. Students left flowers at the school gate. Her colleagues spoke of her kindness, her gentle voice, and how she always stayed late to help her students finish their projects. Nobody could imagine why anyone would want to hurt her. The police chief, Richard Madsen, assured reporters that they were looking into all possibilities. His words, however, did little to calm the unease that had settled over Maple Falls. Detectives reported that the back door had been locked from the inside. There were no broken windows or signs of forced entry. Drawers were open and a few items appeared missing: a necklace, some cash, and her phone. Yet expensive electronics like her laptop and camera were left untouched. To most people it didn't make sense. A robbery should look chaotic, but the house felt disturbingly organized, as if someone had taken their time. One strange detail stood out. A single red scarf, neatly folded, placed on the kitchen counter. None of Lena's friends or family recognized it. The coroner estimated her time of death between late Sunday night and early Monday morning. That meant her body had been in the house for nearly 2 days before anyone found her. As news vans arrived and cameras flashed, the police urged the community to remain calm, but whispers began to spread that whoever had done this hadn't come from outside town. People began locking their doors, watching their neighbors more closely. The peace that once defined Maple Falls was gone, replaced by a thick silence and a lingering fear that the killer was still walking among them. Inside Lena Ward's home, investigators moved carefully through each room, photographing every detail. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary break-in, but the deeper they looked, the more things seemed off. The living room showed faint signs of disturbance: a tipped-over vase, a few scattered papers, and an open drawer in the side table. But the expensive items, like her flat-screen TV and the silver jewelry box on the dresser, remained untouched. It was as if someone had wanted the scene to look like a robbery, but didn't know how to make it convincing. The missing phone was the only clear item of value that had truly disappeared. The strangest thing of all was the red scarf. It was folded neatly on the kitchen counter, clean and smooth, as though someone had placed it there with purpose. The color stood out sharply against the white marble surface. Officers bagged it as evidence, but when asked later, no one could say if it belonged to Lena. Her friends insisted they had never seen her wear anything like it. A small, almost invisible smudge of dirt marked one end of the scarf, but it didn't seem significant at the time. The forensics team searched for fingerprints, but only found partial smudges that didn't match anyone in the system. There were faint footprints in the backyard, leading toward the woods behind her house. The ground was soft from recent rain, and while the prints were visible, they were blurred around the edges, as if someone had tried to step over them afterward. The police claimed the tracks were too unclear to identify size or pattern. Some neighbors later said they saw a figure walking near the woods that night, but no one could provide a solid description. Inside Lena's art studio, her easel was still set up with a half-finished painting. It showed a peaceful scene, a small cabin near a lake, sunlight reflecting off the water. The brush was still lying on the table, dried paint crusted around the bristles. The canvas felt frozen in time, like she had suddenly stopped working and never returned. Near the easel, police found a cup of coffee that had gone cold and a phone charger still plugged into the wall. As the investigation continued, strange inconsistencies began to emerge in the police reports. An early statement mentioned that a window latch was broken, but later versions of the report omitted that detail entirely. Another officer claimed to have collected fibers from Lena's carpet, but no such evidence was logged into the official record. The local newspaper noted these oddities, but their questions were met with short, cautious answers from the department. Neighbors started sharing theories among themselves. Some thought it was a random break-in by a drifter. Others believed Lena knew her killer, that the lack of forced entry meant she had willingly let someone inside. The red scarf became the focus of endless speculation. Some said it was a warning or a message. Others whispered it might have belonged to a woman, someone jealous or betrayed. The truth was, no one really knew what had happened that night. But everyone agreed on one thing: the scene felt too deliberate, too carefully arranged. It was as if someone had taken the time to erase the truth and leave behind only confusion. For a town used to simple answers and peaceful nights, the mystery of that house began to feel like a dark cloud settling over Maple Falls. A secret waiting to be uncovered, but wrapped tightly in silence. Within a week of Lena Ward's murder, the Maple Falls Police Department announced that they had a suspect. His name was Ethan Cole, a local mechanic and Lena's ex-boyfriend. The announcement came as a shock to many residents who had known both of them since high school. The police claimed they had substantial evidence linking Ethan to the crime. They said his fingerprints were found on a glass in Lena's kitchen, and that he had sent her several angry messages months before her death. To the public, it seemed like a clear case, a bitter breakup that turned deadly. The story spread quickly through local news outlets. Photos of Ethan being escorted into the county jail played on every channel. He looked stunned and pale, barely able to speak. Police described him as uncooperative, and hinted that he had a history of temper issues, though no one could recall him ever being violent. Within days, people began to paint him as a jealous ex who had lost control. For the police, the arrest was a victory. It showed the community that progress was being made, and that the nightmare might soon be over. But beneath the surface, small cracks were already forming in their story. Ethan's lawyer released a statement insisting he was innocent and that his alibi was solid. On the night Lena was killed, he had been working a late shift at a garage nearly 80 miles away. Security cameras from the shop showed him clocking in and out, and several co-workers confirmed he never left. When the footage and witness statements surfaced, it confused everyone. How could he have committed the murder if he wasn't even in town? The police dismissed the discrepancy, saying the timeline was still under review. But privately, some residents began to feel uneasy. The investigation suddenly seemed rushed, as if the department had been desperate to close the case quickly. The red scarf, the missing phone, and the mysterious footprints in the backyard were never mentioned again in any official update. Instead, the focus stayed solely on Ethan's supposed motive. Then came another twist. A report leaked from the local hospital, revealing that Lena had filed a medical statement 2 months before her death for a sprained wrist. The report listed no cause of injury, but a nurse later claimed Lena had said she fell after an argument. When asked if it was with Ethan, the nurse couldn't say for sure, Still, the police used the document to reinforce their narrative of a violent relationship. Meanwhile, Ethan's family tried to speak with the media, pleading for people to look at the evidence more carefully. They said Ethan and Lena had broken up months earlier on good terms, and that they still occasionally spoke. Their claims were largely ignored. The public preferred a simple story, and Ethan fit perfectly as the villain. Inside the jail, Ethan reportedly grew withdrawn, refusing to eat and speaking little during questioning. He told his lawyer that the police had stopped looking for anyone else. He believed they had decided on their suspect before the investigation even began, and he wasn't entirely wrong. Behind closed doors, whispers began spreading through the department itself. Some officers felt something about the case was being hidden. But speaking up in Maple Falls, especially against your own, was dangerous. The official story had been set, and questioning it could mean losing your job, or worse. So the truth stayed buried, while the wrong man sat behind bars, waiting for justice that never came. 2 weeks after Ethan Cole's arrest, a new development quietly shook the foundation of the case. A journalist from the Maple Falls Chronicle, Mara Jennings, received an anonymous email late one night. The subject line read, "You arrested the wrong man." Attached was a single document containing chilling information that had never been made public. It described the red scarf found on Lena Ward's kitchen counter, the direction of the footprints behind her house, and even the exact location where her body had been found, details only the killer or an insider would know. The message also included a blurry photograph showing a police badge partially buried in dirt, its number barely visible, and a timestamp from the night of the murder. Mira immediately realized what she was looking at. Someone was suggesting that a police officer might have been involved in Lena's death. Or, at the very least, that evidence had been mishandled. The email had no signature, and the address was untraceable. She forwarded it to her editor and then contacted the police department for comment. By the next morning, the email was gone. Not just from her inbox, but from her computer entirely. The file had vanished without explanation. Mira mentioned this to a friend, saying she felt uneasy, as though someone was watching her. When she tried to publish a short piece about the mysterious email, her editor told her the story had been pulled at the request of official sources. Instead, the newspaper ran a simple update reaffirming Ethan Cole's arrest. The anonymous message was never mentioned again, but Mara refused to let it go. She began investigating quietly, speaking to people around town who might know more about Lena's connections to local law enforcement. A few weeks later, she started to believe she was onto something much larger than she had imagined. She told a close colleague that she believed Lena had been involved with someone inside the Maple Falls Police Department. She suspected that the red scarf might not have been a clue left by the killer, but something far more personal, perhaps belonging to someone close to Lena. Mara began compiling notes and digital copies of documents related to the case, storing them in a private folder labeled Project Maple. Then, one cold morning in October, Mara was found dead in her apartment. The official cause was ruled an accidental overdose. The report stated that she had been under stress and taking prescription medication. Her family, however, insisted she was not depressed and had never used any kind of pills. Her laptop and phone were missing, and her files from Project Maple were nowhere to be found. The police treated her death as unrelated to Lena Ward's murder, but locals whispered otherwise. Some said Mara had gotten too close to the truth. Others believed her death was a warning, that someone inside the system was willing to silence anyone who questioned the official version of events. The anonymous email was never recovered, and the badge in the photograph was never identified. But those who remembered Mara knew one thing for certain. She had discovered something that someone desperately wanted buried. Nearly 6 months after the mysterious death of journalist Mara Jennings, the case of Lena Ward had grown cold. The media had moved on, the public had stopped asking questions, and Ethan Cole remained in custody awaiting trial. But behind the scenes, something unexpected was about to surface. A former Maple Falls police officer named Brian Hale reached out to an independent investigator who had been following the case online. Brian had recently retired from the force after 20 years of service, and what he claimed to know would completely change how the case was seen. He said the police had been protecting one of their own, and that Lena's killer might have been someone wearing a badge. Brian explained that Lena had been in a secret relationship with Sergeant Tom Riker, one of the senior officers in the Maple Falls Police Department. Riker was married with 2 children, known for his strict discipline and spotless record. On the surface, he was the perfect officer, calm, respected, and trusted by his peers. But behind closed doors, he had a darker side that few people knew about. According to Brian, Riker and Lena had been romantically involved for nearly a year, and their relationship had become strained in the months leading up to her death. Lena had allegedly discovered that Riker had promised to leave his wife, but never intended to follow through. She had begun threatening to expose their affair, telling friends she was tired of living in secrecy. The most disturbing claim was that the red scarf, found on Lena's kitchen counter, actually belonged to Riker's wife. Brian said he had seen her wearing it during a police charity event just weeks before Lena's murder. The idea that such a personal item could have been left at the crime scene made the whole case take on a more chilling tone. It wasn't just about jealousy anymore. It hinted at someone trying to send a message or stage a cover-up that only certain people would understand. Brian also claimed that parts of the investigation were deliberately altered. He said that body cam footage from the first responding officers had been deleted before it could be reviewed, and that certain evidence, like the security camera footage showing Riker's patrol car near Lena's house, was marked as corrupted and removed from the official files. According to him, anyone who questioned the inconsistencies was told to let it go for the good of the department. 2 days after Brian shared his story, his car was found abandoned near a riverbank just outside town. His wallet and phone were still inside, but there was no sign of him. The police called it an accident, claiming his car must have slid off the road and into the water, though no evidence supported that theory. The independent investigator tried to reach Brian again, but his phone had been disconnected, and his family was instructed by authorities not to speak to the media. Whispers spread that Brian had been silenced, just like Mara Jennings. It was now clear that there was something deeply wrong within the Maple Falls Police Department. Every person who came too close to the truth seemed to vanish or die suddenly. And as for Sergeant Tom Riker, he continued to serve on the force, untouched by suspicion, as if nothing had ever happened. But behind his calm expression, people began to wonder, what exactly was he hiding, and how far would he go to keep it secret? In early 2020, when most of the world was distracted by other events, the town of Maple Falls received a shock that reignited the forgotten case of Lena Ward. A hacker group calling themselves the Lantern Group released a set of files online, claiming they came directly from the Maple Falls Police Department's internal servers. The files were labeled Confidential Evidence, Ward Case, and what they contained was nothing short of explosive. For the first time, the public could see what had been hidden behind official reports and sealed documents. Among the files was a photograph of the red scarf, along with forensic notes that had never been disclosed to the press. Those notes revealed that fingerprints had been found on the fabric, and that they matched Sergeant Tom Riker. The file was dated 3 days before the police publicly declared Ethan Cole as their suspect. The leak also included email exchanges between officers discussing the case. One message, allegedly written by Chief Richard Madsen, read, "Keep the focus on Cole. We can't afford bad press within the department." Another mentioned correcting inconsistencies in the official narrative. There was even a document listing evidence that had been marked corrupted or misplaced. Among these was the missing security footage from the street outside Lena's home, footage that, according to the metadata, clearly showed Riker's patrol car parked nearby at 11 on the night of her death. The department had claimed the files were damaged, but the hacker group's leak proved they had simply been renamed and hidden in a private folder labeled Internal Review. The revelation spread quickly through social media. People who had long believed Ethan Cole was innocent now had undeniable proof. Journalists from larger networks picked up the story, and within days, national attention was back on Maple Falls. The police department tried to deny the authenticity of the documents, but digital experts verified that the files had not been tampered with. Pressure grew for an official investigation into the Maple Falls Police Department, and protesters began gathering outside the precinct, demanding answers. While the department faced public outrage, Tom Riker vanished from sight. He stopped reporting for work, and his colleagues claimed he was on personal leave. No one could confirm where he was. Neighbors said they hadn't seen him or his family in weeks. His house sat dark at night, the mailbox overflowing. When reporters tried to reach his wife, they found the property empty, with a for sale sign half buried in the yard. Rumors spread that Riker had fled the state, or that someone within the department was protecting him until the scandal faded. As more information from the leaks surfaced, a disturbing pattern emerged. Every piece of evidence that could have implicated Riker or the department had been buried or destroyed. Witness statements mentioning a patrol car near Lena's house had been edited out of reports. One officer's handwritten note describing unusual behavior from Riker the night of the murder was crossed out and replaced with "officer unavailable." It became painfully clear that this was not just one man's crime, it was a coordinated cover-up. Despite the growing outrage, no arrests were made. The county prosecutor announced that the files could not be verified as legitimate evidence, and the investigation stalled. But for the people of Maple Falls, the truth was already out. The red scarf, the missing footage, the silence of the police, it all pointed in one direction. And though Tom Riker had vanished, the shadow of his name lingered over every street in town. The residents knew the case was far from over. Something darker was still unfolding, and the people who had buried the truth were starting to lose control of their secret. The disappearance of Sergeant Tom Riker became one of the strangest and most unsettling chapters in the entire Lena Ward case. After the Lantern Group's leak exposed his possible involvement, he stopped showing up for work and seemed to vanish from Maple Falls entirely. The police department released a short statement saying Riker had taken an extended leave of absence for personal reasons, but the public didn't believe it. Reporters camped outside his house, only to find it abandoned. His wife, Melissa Riker, and their 2 children were gone as well. The blinds were drawn and the yard was overgrown, as if no one had lived there for months. Inside the mailbox were letters dating back weeks, unopened and damp from rain. A week later, Melissa filed a missing persons report for her husband. She told authorities that Tom had left home late one evening, saying he needed to clear his head, and never returned. His cell phone was turned off, and his bank accounts showed no new activity. Detectives tracked his care using traffic cameras and eventually found it abandoned at an old gas station near the state border. The keys were still in the ignition, and his badge and service weapon were missing. There were no signs of a struggle, no fingerprints other than his own, and no witnesses who remembered seeing him there. The department quickly labeled him missing under unclear circumstances, though rumors soon began to swirl that the police already knew more than they were admitting. Conspiracy theories spread across online forums and true crime channels. Some believed Riker had fled the country to escape prosecution. Others claimed he had been silenced by his own department to keep the scandal contained. A few even suggested he might have taken his own life out of guilt, but none of those theories could explain what was found a month later. A fisherman from a neighboring county discovered a metal box tangled in reeds near the edge of Lake Ravenwood, just 10 miles from Maple Falls. Inside were several disturbing items: a police badge, a handgun wrapped in cloth, and a note scrawled on lined paper. The writing was shaky, almost unreadable, but one sentence stood out clearly: "It wasn't supposed to happen this way." The badge's number matched Tom Riker's. The discovery sent shockwaves through the town. The police quickly recovered the box and released a statement saying they were analyzing its contents. They refused to confirm whether the handwriting belonged to Riker, but the implication was clear. To the public, it looked like a confession, or perhaps a farewell. However, investigators quietly noted something unusual. The gun found in the box was not Riker's service weapon. It was a civilian model, unregistered, and wiped clean of fingerprints. Speculation reached a fever pitch. If Riker had really taken his own life, where was his body? Why leave the gun and badge in a box, instead of carrying them with him? Some locals believed he was still alive, hiding under a new identity. Others whispered that someone else had planted the evidence to make it look like he had disappeared voluntarily. Journalists began linking his vanishing act to the deaths of Mara Jennings and Brian Hale, suggesting they were all tied to the same buried truth, the secret that the Maple Falls Police Department had spent years concealing. Despite the discovery at Lake Ravenwood, the case stalled once again. The police declared there was insufficient evidence to determine foul play and quietly closed the missing persons file. But in Maple Falls, people still looked over their shoulders at night. They talked about the red scarf, the deleted footage, and the badge that somehow found its way into a box beneath the lake. And they wondered whether Tom Riker had truly vanished, or whether someone had made sure he would never be found. The official story of Lena Ward's murder was never rewritten. Even after the files leaked, the officer vanished, the truth clawed its way to the surface. The Maple Falls Police Department quietly declared the case unsolved and closed it under the label of insufficient evidence. Ethan Cole, the man once branded a killer, was released from custody in the middle of the night without warning or apology. The department issued a short statement thanking him for his patience and cooperation, as though his year behind bars had been a misunderstanding instead of a stolen life. He left Maple Falls soon after, unwilling to stay in a town that had destroyed his name. Reporters tried to reach him, but he refused every interview. People said he moved somewhere far north, changed his number, and never looked back. The townspeople wanted to move on, but they couldn't. The case had left a scar on the place, something invisible yet heavy. The once busy art studio where Lena lived remained sealed with yellowed police tape fluttering in the wind. The house sat silent, curtains drawn, a frozen reminder of the night everything changed. Children walking to school avoided the sidewalk in front of it. Neighbors swore they sometimes saw lights flicker inside, though the electricity had long been shut off. The property became a local legend, a symbol of fear and unfinished justice. Over time, more pieces of information began surfacing online. An anonymous source posted a short video clip claiming to be part of the missing security footage. It showed a police cruiser parked under a streetlight at 11:46 p.m., 1 minute before the timestamp in the leaked documents. The plate number was blurred, but the reflection of a badge could be seen on the windshield. Within hours the video was taken down, and the account that posted it was deleted. The department refused to acknowledge it, calling it a fabrication, yet locals recognized the house in the background. It was Lena Ward's. People in Maple Falls grew divided. Some still believed in the official version, saying the leaks were exaggerated or fabricated. Others were certain the truth had been buried deliberately. Over time, those who had spoken too loudly about the case moved away as if afraid the curse of Lena's death might follow them. Businesses near her home closed, property values dropped, and the town's reputation began to crumble. What was once a peaceful community became a place known for silence, a silence that felt forced, almost rehearsed. In 2023, a new police chief took office and ordered a brief review of unsolved historical cases. For a few weeks, residents hoped the truth might finally come out, but nothing happened. The files were quietly sealed again, and no updates were released. When a local journalist asked about Sergeant Tom Riker, the department's spokesperson replied simply, "There is no active investigation regarding that individual." It was as if he had never existed. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened the night Lena Ward was killed, or what became of Tom Riker. Some believe he fled with help from someone inside the force. Others think he was eliminated to protect those higher up, and there are those who whisper that he still walks among them, living under a new name, watching the town that once trusted him. Every year, on the anniversary of Lena's death, a single red scarf appears at her front door. No one ever sees who leaves it there. The police take it away each time, calling it a cruel prank, but the tradition never stops. For Maple Falls, the murder of Lena Ward remains more than just an unsolved crime. It is a reminder that some truths are too dangerous to uncover, and that in this small American town, justice was never meant to be found.